Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. Today we're going to explore security, and it's very important that you understand what the security team does and how they can help you secure your account. That's going to be one of the major themes that we hit today, along with botting and RMT, which is a name for real money transactions, which is where a player will sell in-game currency for real money. And we'll cover some of those issues and more with the security team from CCP. But first, I want to introduce our panel that'll be talking with them. How's it going, Dirk?
Hey, it's good. Good morning. How are you?
Really good, thanks. Carneros?
Good morning. Great to be here.
And joining us is Noisy Gamer.
Hello, everybody.
All right. Well, the security team is one of those secretive teams that works at CCP. It does very important stuff, but it's not publicly known unless there's a problem, usually. But they do put out podcasts and tweets. Sorry, they put out dev blogs and tweets and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and introduce them, starting with the community representative, CCP Guard. How's it going?
Hey, doing great. Great to be here. Looking forward to this.
Thanks. Long overdue. We should have had you on a long time ago. I'm glad you're here now. And next, I would like to introduce CCP Peligro.
Hey, how's it going? Happy to be here. Excited to not be able to answer any of your questions.
Okay, that's what we expect. This will be a short show. And also CCP Grimmy, and I'll say it correct the first time, and then after that I'll mispronounce it.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. It's good to
Hi,
be here.
Grimmy. How do you say your name, by the way?
CCP Grimmy.
Grimmy. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're a part of Permaband, is that right?
Yes. Well, yeah. Me and Guard.
Yeah, Grimmy. He writes a lot of the songs, so he's we sort of take turns with the lyrics, but he writes the songs and everything. So.
Yeah, Grimmy is definitely the artist in Team Security. He's the man with the graphs and also with the guitar skills.
Yeah, it has to look good and sound good.
Is it true you guys will be performing at FanFest?
Yes, that is true. We're bringing the band back together, and it'll be pretty fantastic. And then we're gonna be playing, and then Bass Hunter is gonna be playing, and it's gonna be a hell of a party.
Oh man, Bass Hunter.
It's gonna be great.
Will be glorious.
Jättebra.
For sure. Jättebra.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. So that's FanFest coming up. You can see Permaband. And it's funny because it really took a while for this to sink in that Permaband is really based on security, isn't it?
It's a little funny name there, yeah?
Yeah, I guess. As a little,
Yeah.
Matterall literally figured that out right before the show when we pointed it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, are you serious?
I thought it had to do with like
Dan Brown stuff.
Yeah, right. Super deep. You have to know scripture. No, it was. I thought it was like, permafrost or something. I was like, yeah, okay, Iceland's cold. All right. Okay, so let's actually talk. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
All right, let's actually get into security because, wow, it's really been a big topic lately for many reasons, but mostly. Because of CSM minutes, there was some security stuff talked about there and hacked accounts and stuff like that. So we'll take this into 3 sections. We'll go into account hacking. We'll talk about RMT, and then we'll get to botting, and then miscellaneous stuff after that. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds great.
It's pretty good.
All right, Dirk.
All right, Dirk. Well, okay. I don't know. I thought you were going to sort of handle the first part before I get into
You're right.
Some of the heavier.
You know what?
Give him a softball.
Right.
Yeah, well,
no, you're right.
Yeah, the history.
Hold on, no. Yeah, definitely. We want to let's dial this way back and take the basics, and Dirk will take it to more advanced stuff. But we want to find out from you guys, what does the security team actually do?
Yeah, I would say no day is alike, even though every day is very much alike. If that makes any sense, we are.
Sounds like Eve.
Yeah. It's a adaptive landscape. It's never static and it's always changing. It's part of why the job's so interesting and fun to me.
Yep. There's a
challenging.
a lot of looking at logs and then talking to people who we work with. We work with pretty much all the company people everywhere who are
because we're all
helping
sort
out.
of stakeholders in this.
Yeah.
The only reason we care about these things, security related in an EVE context, is because of the player demand for it. The game must be serviced, and you can't just let it run.
But technically, you guys look after players that break rules, like let's say through using third-party software to automate their gameplay. But there's also another facet that looks at your account security and stuff like that. And do you guys handle internal affairs too?
Yeah, that's us. We have just incorporated internal affairs into the team security duties.
Right. So it looks like there's a team security, and then there's an info security, or there was, at least in 2015, and then there was an internal affairs, right?
Yeah.
So this was a question I thought I'd throw out at Guard or somebody, that shouldn't the security team also secure the upcoming information so it doesn't leak all over the place through the, from the test servers?
That would be very nice. It's something we've always wanted, but to be perfectly honest, as long as we put the stuff on the internet, people are going to find it, So that would be a total change in how we operate as a company in terms of like letting people test the stuff before it comes out and having volunteers. And I would like it if we were able to keep secrets. Obviously, we can do things like push some changes that are false to the test servers, and you mine them and you freak out about it. But it's very difficult when people are just scraping the test server and diffing the builds.
Yeah, it's sort of a we've always operated on at least after the few first months of running EVE, we sort of ran on the knowledge that EVE players know anything that's out there. If it goes on the internet, someone will find it, someone will pick through it, and that's it.
Jamie, did you want to say something?
A little bit about the romance of your job in the eyes of the players for a second. Let's say you're looking at some data, you're investigating a bad guy, and you realize that he's actually logged in right now and he might be doing exactly what you're investigating. How likely are you to get in a cloaked ship and go to where he is and watch him?
That's quite likely. It depends on the context. I mean, if it's a bot, definitely go in game to watch him, and we have special tools to do that as well.
Nice.
You can't see us in local or anything like that.
Exactly.
And if there's an exploit or something that we're looking into, this is very useful. Or can be.
I remember a case many years ago when there was an investigation into a super sneaky exploit that was going on. It took us a while to figure out how the guy was doing it. We just knew what he was doing, couldn't really sort of pick apart how he was making this thing happen. So I remember like skulking around in a ship, chasing him. There's like a few of us sitting in front of a monitor, looking at the guy doing things in space and just trying to connect the dots. Like, what is the action he's taking that's causing him to be able to do this thing that he does?
And have to have the logs open and then the client open, just to sort of, because I need to be in tune with how it looks in the logs and what is actually going on in the client at the same time. And the backend is just as complex and gigantic as EVE Online itself, if you can imagine.
Especially nowadays, now that we have like, I mean, the old meme of the logs show nothing. That's it's ancient history. We have vastly improved
that
logs.
was sort of solved with big data. Now we're on sort of the second or third generation of big data software.
We had just a bunch of like hand-picked events that we were able to look at, and it was took time. If you wanted to add an event that you could always have available, it would be work and it would take time. So like now, it's a different situation and has been for a few years.
So does that mean the logs finally show something, or is it?
Yeah, they show everything officially. That's the new meme you should go with.
Log show everything.
Until we need it to show, and then it's like, well, they don't show that.
Then sorry, we can't verify that.
Okay, now I know Grimmy's been around for a long time because he was one of the authors of the Unholy Rage dev blog back in the day. So he's been there for a long time. I'm not sure, Pellegro, how long you've been there, but can you guys sort of go through the history of what we now know to be team security, but really kind of back it up to sort of, how it had its origins and how it grew over time?
Well,
Yeah, you want to start, Grimmy? I mean, you
all of us in this call used to be GMs, so that's where we started, getting involved in, and kind of just got involved in dealing with certain types of cases, and then we made a specific dedicated team security a few years back. But it used to be, back in the day, it used to be GMs just going through stuff and finding the bad guys.
Noisy actually published a really good article on Friday about this. It's sort of the history of it, and he goes really in depth, and it's all very, as far as I could tell, really accurate. There was like a cross-disciplinary, like a task force that had buy-in from more or less every department at CCP. And then I think in around 2011 or something, we had a kind of full security team.
Yeah, I think it was, you had the Eve Security Task Force in 2011, and then in 2012, it was apparently the concept was actually proven to the producers and everything, because then in 2012, that's when the team security was like first officially recognized.
Well, it's funny. I thought this would be sorry, I thought this would be the quietest show ever, but you guys are actually very talkative. This is great.
Yeah, I mean, just as an example, when I was a GM, I started in April 2006. And, like a simple thing like reimbursing a ship could take up to 2 hours. It's a task that's now one click, if that. So a lot has changed since then, and the logs we have has certainly changed. When we went from the first generation of logs in Eve, sort of the sequel, the stuff we've always had, that was approximately 30 million lines a day. And then when we added Hadoop on top of that, that was pulling in 300, 400 million lines a day. And that is 8 years ago. So we're just adding to it, storing more and more, using it better.
Has the type of things that you're seeing changed and evolved with technology and with smart people?
Yeah, absolutely. What we see today on account security is largely a byproduct of the internet as a place in 2018. It's not in the best of states, to be honest. I mean,
what do you mean by that?
I mean, as a consumer of MMOs and just games in general, it seems like there is enough breaches on the internet going on to the point where bad guys can just use leaked credentials and have plenty of success in compromising accounts, because so many people recycle passwords and so many people use the same credentials everywhere, right? It's a subsection of something called brute forcing. It's dictionary attacks, credential stuffing. It's just like a slightly more modernized way of doing it.
What is credential stuffing? Can you explain it?
Yeah, so they're taking, say they go on the depths of the internet and buy a pack of 500 million leaked credentials that are put into like a combo list or like a spam list. And then they fire up some hacking tools they paid for, because they're not no skilled hackers, and then they point it at various websites and try to log in. And because username and password is just simply not enough, they have plenty of success in doing that. Especially after Eve went free to play, there is no cost associated with accessing the account, and so this has now really become the sort of de facto way for RMTers to get their RMT goods. If you are buying ISK nowadays, it's going to come for fraud or hacked accounts.
Well, we'll get into RMT a little bit later. These are all connected, so it's going to be interesting how these threads work.
Yeah.
But let's go into account hacking first, because that seems to be a big deal. So I think, Dirk, you might have had some questions on this, or you want to open up the subject?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I do want to point out here is one of the things we are going to try to do is kind of compartmentalize these things a little bit, because we can get into kind of bouncing around topics and going from account hacking to botting to real money trading, and hopefully we can sort of keep the questions and whatnot in those compartments so that we just don't ping pong everywhere. But let's get to account hacking. Basically, account hacking seemed to be a focus of your attention in late 2017, as well as at the CSM summit. The summit minutes reflect the fact that Falcon actually held up the security dev blog because it didn't focus enough on botting, which was what had garnered the attention of kind of the public out there. Sort Dragon also said at the summit that he wanted to address the elephant in the room, which in his opinion was botting. In your opinion, are bots the elephant in the room? And can you explain to us which is worse and why? Botting or account hacking?
Yeah, so in 2017, me and Grimmy, we were sort of just in catch-up mode, I would say. We knew everything was going to change after Ascension. To what extent was not clear. And then in 2017, what we saw was just this hideous amount of compromised accounts. I think we're talking like 30,000 accounts compromised in less than a year, and that's all RMT. They compromise these accounts when they've made a sale. So it's like on demand. If you go and buy some dirty ISK online and they're going to log into an account they previously compromised and extract the skill points and contract it over to you or something like that. I don't think... I think perhaps botting is more visible to the players, and there is more impact on you and your ability to enjoy the game. At least if you don't bot yourself, it's clear that you're at a disadvantage just by virtue of playing by the rules. So I don't know.
You said 30,000 accounts.
Yes, in 1 year.
Those are a lot of those accounts are from people who haven't logged in for a while. So there's a big pool of people that have played EVE at some point, but aren't necessarily active at any given time. So they may not even notice it right away. And it's pretty heinous, as Polygon was saying, that people are buying from these guys, and it's not even that the damage has already been done in many cases. It's like people go and pay, and then just on demand they go and skill extract and mess someone up and ruin all their stuff, and then maybe they come back to that someday. So it's a very direct participation in a pretty evil act, I would say.
It's also, whether botting or hacking is worse. It kind of depends on where you're looking from, basically. If you get hacked, you're definitely gonna feel it.
Yeah.
But the bots are definitely also a visible problem that needs to be handled.
No question. And regarding that blog, it was something we tried to put out at the end of December. Pretty busy time, and it didn't really hit the mark. It was all about account security, and all the rage, so to speak, public was about botting, and so it didn't really address the community concerns. And so I actually agreed with holding it back, because it's like we would put out this thing and then sort of not comment on what you guys really expected from us to comment on.
Right, but I mean, one thing could potentially be sort of superficial, that just what we see or how we feel about something, versus sort of the extent to how bad one thing is versus another, right? I mean, do I want you to be focused on something that is potentially superficial, or do I want you to be focused on something that is truly damaging to the game? So I'll kind of follow that up with sort of a next question of the ISK sold on the real money trading markets out there. Can you kind of give us a proportion of how much you believe comes from botting and farming operations versus hacked accounts?
It really depends on the vendors that you are buying from, and I wish I could be more specific there, just to like outright say this guy is selling from hacked accounts. But you will have to find that out when you get banned or have some assets seized from you instead.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question. It's related to this because you have the hacked accounts, but it's not necessarily that their EVE Online account is hacked. Like there's like you talked about the credential stuffing, and like I know that a few months ago there was a data breach at eBay, which had people's usernames and passwords and buying history. So that kind of thing. Do you see that kind of data breach when that happens? Then you see a big effort for credential stuffing when in EVE Online shortly after.
Yes, there is a direct correlation with these breaches and increased success rates. They're always adapting, and I think where I noticed it last year was really with the Yahoo breach. That's where it started, and then there was like MySpace shortly after, and all kinds of sites, just really, really big breaches, getting bigger and more frequent as well.
Yeah, but this used to be like 2 major attacks every year, but now it's every day. So
Yeah,
it's
so like an ongoing thing.
ongoing thing constantly.
The message is basically like, just protect your email accounts, with everything you can. Don't take any chances. Keep your keep your accounts, your main accounts that you use to sign up for everything. Keep them very secure. Helps everyone.
Now,
So one second. Let me.
What you have to realize is that your username and your email is just public knowledge, right? You have been in some site that was breached. Your email is public knowledge.
So that's the takeaway here: is it doesn't matter where you were breached. The fact that you use the same account name, the same email, and same passwords across the board, and all the things that you do, any place where you get breached means that you're breached everywhere else too,
Yeah.
and that's happening in EVE.
Yeah, so brute forcing would be like, I'm going to guess. I'm going to try every possible combination of characters and see if I can guess your password. But credential stuffing is just like, I know these credentials are good somewhere. I'm going to try them everywhere.
Yeah, we can see that they're trying usernames that don't exist and stuff, so they're obviously from somewhere else.
Yeah. So it's like, it's just basic security. Never use the same password twice. Use disposable passwords or password managing software, or and two-factor authentication on everything. Keep everything safe.
Well, since you bring up two-factor authentication, and I'm going to try and address King Aries sort of in his question out there, but at the summit, Pellegro, you brought up the huge trend in accounts being compromised, and quote, most RMT occurring now is from stolen accounts, is apparently what you said there. There was a lot of discussion there regarding how account hacking is the primary source of this stuff. Yet, CCP Cemetery commented to the effect that we would want to find the best security with the least friction possible. And then you said CCP does not want to put arbitrary restrictions on the EVE experience to prevent real money trading. Do you want people to be using two-factor authentication? And if so, why do we not just require it if it's that level of a problem?
Well, it's not a decision the security team could make. I mean, we're obviously pushing for mandatory two-factor across the board. And I think we're working towards that. And that's like, it'd be reasonable. But even though, even if we had mandatory two-factor authentication for everybody, like say you had to use the Google app, that would only help those who are actively playing. It wouldn't retroactively secure the millions of accounts that are in our database that are dormant as such. And then those are very hard to protect because when the bad guy is logging in, he is essentially logging in with valid credentials, right? We see it based on profiling, basically the behavior that happens, and some technical information we collect as well.
So we can assume that if somebody breaks into an account, what kinds of things do they do? Like, I imagine take the money and take the skill points, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many wildcards too. This is why repairing a hacked account can be very difficult. I mean, what if it's the director in a corporation? He can ruin thousands of people.
Let's say you come back to the game and your account has been hacked. Maybe you don't even realize it at first because you're not surprised you can't remember the password, and you you manage to reset it, you go back inside and it's been wiped out. And you go to CCP and you ask for help. How much work goes into restoring that account? What does it take?
GMs do that by and large. So it's not done by the security team, and they are doing a really, really great job at this. I think last year it would take maybe 3 months to get your stuff back, or a month, and now we're getting back to people within a week or a couple of days. And I think that we've just gotten better at handling it, and we've also gotten better tools. That was sort of a lot of 2017 for the security team, sort of advocating for some internal tools that we could use to help us cope with the new landscape that we found ourselves in.
Yeah, we're at least we're trying to get better results on being quicker and stuff. But these guys are much faster. They can ruin the account in a couple of minutes. So it's hard to catch up on that.
Yeah, and to the point of like no arbitrary restrictions, because it doesn't work with Eve. It's like, a lot of other games with the Plex implementation have made it so that you simply can't trade the Plex. You can only sell it for ISK or in-game cash, whatever.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but any of these things, right? Whether it be two-factor authentication on your Eve, on your Eve accounts, or two-factor authentication, even on your email that is related to your Eve accounts, or anything else for that matter. It's not about being able to 100% immunize yourself to anything, right? It's about making yourself a less attractive target than other accounts that they come across, other forms of hacking that they can do, right? They want to go for the low-lying fruit first, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And as long as people continue to have bad passwords, they're just going to keep doing this. They have more than enough of a steady supply to pull from to cope with the demand. But it's sad because most players aren't aware of where they get this ISK from, and so from CCP's point of view, we've just had skill points stolen from the account of a customer or potential customer, and then the damage is already done. There'll be a very little option for setting that straight, except for to contact the player and tell him you just got stuff from a hacked account. Usually they are quite understanding of that and apologetic, which is all we're trying to do. We're trying to relay a message here, because there's no way we can stop you from going on the internet and buying some Eve stuff at the end of the day.
Since you brought up passwords, I do happen to have a question here related to that. Does Eve have a minimum standard for passwords, and is it robust enough? I'll follow that up with, should Eve require a higher standard of security when trying to log in from another IP range as well?
That's something we're looking at. Yeah, we're always improving these things.
There's a lot of interest in this topic at the moment, and people are looking at a lot of different ways to make us and our customers less attractive target for these guys.
Is there a way to push people in front of us, like get Dirk instead of my account?
Wow, that's
Steve,
but
you gotta
yeah,
give
we'll
me
talk after. We'll talk after privately.
Okay,
Yeah.
You're driving home from work, and there's traffic, and you're going to be late. And there's a big fleet op that you're trying to get home for. Is it against the EULA to call home and ask your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, kids to log in your characters for you so you can rush right in and be a star?
No, that's fine.
All right, it's not considered a hack then.
Don't tell me that's never happened to any of you, because it has.
In your somebody said Dirk McGurk feeling under the bus. No, not at all. I don't know. Does Eve effectively, in your opinion, communicate the importance of account security and do so often enough? Is it enough in the players' faces?
No, and this was a failure of the security team in 2017. We didn't stay in touch. We didn't put out anything. Basically, we were scrambling to keep up with the hacked accounts. And at the end of the year, I realized, in retrospect, I probably should have spent more time on botting in 2017, because I can't stop people from logging in with valid credentials. At the same time, it's something that I take very seriously. I can't stand to watch 30,000 accounts being ruined as a result of this, and I know that only a tiny percentage of these guys will ever contact us, and the rest can therefore be considered lost. A lot of people actually, if your account gets hacked, you simply won't go through the trouble of contacting CCP and filing a ticket and going through that process, which isn't perfect. It's something that we're looking closely at, though, and we hope to have perhaps better tools for self-recovery and such in the future.
Yes.
The
But,
communication side of this is something that we in the communications team have sort of acknowledged as well. We should just talk to people more, and we're going to be giving out these monthly updates now on what's happening with all kinds of clarifications on things that people are talking about, and more information, tips and tricks, anything that's going on, basically giving people updates on how we're doing. And
what I like about this is that it's going to come from community instead of me and Grimmy. I mean, we need to work with data, even though it's very nice to constantly be talking to the players and the press and whatnot. We have to get our hands dirty if we're going to be we have to actually ban the bots, find the bad guys. Can't do that if I'm just talking.
Nope, that's true. And I'll go back to a question here from King Aries out in the audience, who said, well, his question is it an issue of team security being understaffed? Okay. I will ask you, how do you feel your staff is in relation to what it is you're tasked with on the security side? And then I'm not going to talk about what what the community team staffing is like and their ability to communicate all the things that they need to communicate.
Yeah, I mean,
we do have very
big
good
secret, really, that we're down some people and we're looking for replacements.
But I mean, then if you ask any team that has a lot of pressure to do stuff, they'll never tell you that they have enough people. So it's
I could always take a lot of people, and if you want to volunteer, maybe we can work something out.
Yeah.
And if we've got qualified security professionals watching the show right now, tell them a little bit about what positions you have available and what cities they'd be living in if they took that position.
It's not finalized. I think they're working on the strategy for InfoSec as such, which is separate from the EVE security or game security aspects. The corporate security or the corporate information security department, you need a whole different, professional for that side of things. That would probably be a Reykjavik position or London. I'm not 100% sure, but we do have a London office as well.
Grimmy, did you want to get in here?
No, I'm good. They got this, actually.
Okay. Noisy?
Not touching this with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. I saw him trying earlier. Noisy gamer.
I mean, we do. If we need to throw more people at the problem, we do have a very good working relationship with GMs, so we can always get help from them, and a lot of people in the company who can pick up the slack.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I should just clarify where team security is fallen now. We used to be in the IT department. Now we are in the player experience department, which is actually the rebranded customer support department. And I think it's a good fit because all the stuff that we do on a daily basis has to do with improving the player experience. We only do this because you guys demand it, right?
And you used to sit right next to the customer service guys anyway.
Yeah. So it's a good fit. It's like we're back home with friends.
Indeed.
And it's a new focus too, because it's CCP is by and large entirely focused on EVE now, and there's less other things, virtual reality and whatnot, other offices. So all eyes are on EVE as such.
And a really cool thing about what these guys security team is like, it sort of naturally attracts everybody's attention in the company. So when like the data guys, the game designers, the programmers, everybody who like especially the people who are who are deep Eve players or have been deep Eve players and are really, they really deeply care about this stuff, then this is just an area of the company that that everybody's really interested in, and so everybody when there's something happening, everybody wants to come and take a look and help out and pitch in ideas and throw in help. So it's really good for that.
All right, Noisy, did you have something you want to say here?
Yeah, I just had a question. It's going back a little bit. This might be a little bit something that you may not want to talk about, but apparently on the botting forums, they're convinced that you're watching them, and that if they log in with an IP that's not associated with earlier stuff, that you're basically emailing them and not letting them log in until they enter a code that you're emailing them. That sounds kind of like trying to stop people from just going in and randomly cleaning out accounts. Is that happening?
It's an industry standard as such. If you're logging in from a new location, we're going to send you a challenge.
Yeah, it just sounded like something new because all these botters were freaking out.
Yeah, I'm really glad. We are watching you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do a very similar thing at my company.
Yeah, it's good. Good
Sorry,
to know
not
they're on their
sorry.
toes.
Well, so the big takeaway is that the internet's gotten to be a crazy place where there's so many data breaches from whatever companies. And because we tend to keep the same email most of our lives, and usually passwords too, that affects EVE Online, even for dead accounts that you haven't even played in a while. So somebody may break into those and steal a bunch of wealth there, either through ISK or skill points. And that's an unfair advantage for some people. And that obviously leads to RMT, which we'll cover in a little bit. But would you say that's like the big takeaway, is to secure these accounts, lock them down with two-factor authentication, and change up your passwords?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, if you know anybody that is still on a Yahoo email, maybe reach out and tell them about Gmail or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
No,
And I mean,
in all seriousness, it's like a steady supply. So it's just about practicing decent security standards with regards to your passwords, and to do that you need a password manager, because the human brain can't remember. How many accounts do you have on the internet nowadays? I'm probably at 100. And trying to remember all those passwords is just a fool's game.
and if the worst solution in the world to that is just using the same one because it's easy to remember. I mean, you don't even have to remember.
That's what people go for.
Exactly. And it's like even if you don't use a password manager, any service nowadays has a forgotten password feature that takes 2 minutes to go through if you can't remember, or your cookies are gone or whatever. Just it's not worth it to reuse passwords.
Remember this? Look in the camera.
Yes, I remember this.
What are we looking at for podcast listeners? What is that?
We're looking at a little handheld code generator device with a CCP logo on it.
A little keychain.
Well, that was handed out at FanFest, right, in the lead up to, I think, a big announcement from Team Security at the time, right?
Are you talking about the token?
Yeah.
Yes, the mystical token.
It's now a prized possession that I say for no reason.
It's a collectible,
like
yes. It's never gonna work. Never. It's like the door.
So one last takeaway, and that is that you're up against people that aren't maybe not even players anymore, right? Because this could be the interest of groups that don't even play EVE, attacking accounts that aren't even active.
Yeah, these are groups doing it for a living, systematically attacking free-to-play games. The fraud we see that they're hitting all other free-to-play games usually.
It looks like this has been like unrelated groups for a while now.
There are multiple sort of persistent threats.
Yeah.
So when people are like, "Hey, the team security is not taking care of our botting problem," and you guys are wrestling with, like, I don't know, these underground mafias that are attacking these dead accounts, like, let's keep that in perspective, right? Like, you guys are dealing with 30,000 broken into incidents, and that keeps you pretty busy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and it's like, we don't want the reality to be that we have to, choose which problem to attack. We want to attack all of these problems, and we're ramping up to do more damage to these guys than we've been able to do in the past. So there's a lot of good things happening.
Yeah, and honestly, I've been at CCP since 2006. I'm on like year 13 now. Grimmy has been there longer. Guard's been there longer. The other guy in team security right now is a senior game master who just joined us. Maybe hear more from him in the future, but he's also one of the oldest employees we have here, and a really good fit for this sort of work, I think. Also, I've been here for so long that I can happily say that there's never been more eyes on these topics than right now. There is like a real big movement inside of CCP that's happening.
Yeah, that's cool.
Partly because me and Grimmy have spent 2017 crying very loudly. I mean, if we didn't put out dev blogs, we certainly put out a couple of internal blogs that were really, really, I don't know, difficult to write, but they needed to be written.
Was Grimmy crying with his guitar?
Yeah. But yeah, it's true. We do have a lot of interest, and people all over the company are like helping out in all kinds of ways. So it's an exciting times, actually.
Yeah, I think it's more effective too. Perhaps the first team security at CCP was a little bit isolated, and it was too much of a secretive operation. I think this is something that no department can do on their own. It's also an ongoing thing, and like security, I always say it's like an active state. It's like posture. And so to be able to have an impact, we need to work with everybody at CCP, basically. And that's what
and the community
now. Yeah.
And the community.
Community, if we have a community with it, of course, everything is better and more effective. And we just noticed, like, because we haven't communicated a lot about this, there's a lot of things that people don't intuitively understand, or they think something works a certain way when it really doesn't. And it's just that's just because we haven't properly explained it or had enough discussions about it to sort of standoffish in our sort of security mentality, which is don't show your hand, but you can show people plenty without showing the bad guys your secrets.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the 30,000 accounts just real quick for a second, because there's some people out in the audience that are sort of kind of extrapolating some things there. That is 30,000 accounts that were hacked last year. And the only reason that you knew that they were hacked was because those players actually came back and said, "Yo, bro, my account got hacked."
No.
Okay.
By and large, we found them after they were ruined by profiling the behavior of, So when these guys log into tons of accounts, we see patterns on our end. It depends, on the situation. But just as an example, I'll use the Yahoo breach. We'll see 500 accounts with a Yahoo email, reset their passwords, log in and extract their skill points, fly to Jita, and then start handing it out to people. That is an asymmetric transaction as far as CCP is concerned. It stands out like a sore thumb. At the same time, it's not enough to find it after the damage has been done. We need more preventative measures, because from those 30,000 accounts that we have banned as compromised and have been ruined by real money traders, I would say that maybe 1,000 filed a ticket, right? So the rest is just, I call them the poor lost souls.
There's also a kind of a movement to, like, the other side of this is there's kind of a movement to punish people that don't use two-factor authentication. It seems like you should do that, but since that costs you so much time sorting out the wreckage that people leave you by not protecting their accounts, could there be a banning penalty for people who are lax in security?
No, I think it's a bad idea to shame the user. I mean, it's
no security shaming.
No. This is EVE Online. Of course, we want to shame the user.
No, but I mean, I've thought about this myself, because you kind of make fun of people who have shitty passwords, but it's just they're humans, It's
maybe that's the problem.
Human nature, I think.
So they're also customers. We their rights and sort of well-being is what we care about. It's just the way it is.
You probably want to incentivize it rather than like threaten people with punishment.
Yeah, that's always a thing, and there's things with E where you kind of like you have to design all these things that are like a minor nuisance maybe elsewhere. You have like this little, it's only 10 seconds extra to log in if you use this, but then you have people that have 30 accounts, and so you can't design any solution for a single account user. And then we've done that with things in the past, and we usually hear about it in angry threats. So we got to make sure all these, if we put up a threshold or a new security measure, whatever it is, that it's also not just a massive nuisance for everybody else. It has to.
Yeah, I mean, if we've done our
Well put
job
together.
properly, you wouldn't even notice, right?
So just going back to what Grimmy just said about incentivizing. So is there any thoughts about like maybe giving a 1% training boost to any account that's using two-factor authentication?
Yes, we have brought that up as an idea, and it's something we're pushing for. I mean, any kind of incentivizing of also a good idea to advertise now that the old backdoor, which is to say that if you were using the Google Authenticator app, if someone had access to your email, they could bypass it. That's now been fixed. So now it is a secure implementation. So you should use the Authenticator in specific, as it can't be bypassed by the email, which is the point of entry for all these compromised accounts. Our adoption rate is really low, but that's because we've had an implementation that wasn't good enough. Now I think it's good enough. We're going to start to advertise it.
It's great.
This is like, this is what the player organizations can help us with. Word of mouth, encourage your users to, your sort of members to use this and be safe, and especially, protecting corp assets and such.
Now we know why you're here. It's a push to get the word out.
So I mean, like we said, we haven't talked about this enough, and it's not the way to go. It's there's a marginal benefit to being a silent brick on security, but it's a loss. We have to talk about this. It's like if we don't tell the community what's happening and spread awareness of these things, we only have misinformation and frustration.
Yeah, awareness is super important.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I was actually just looking at the stats for two-factor adoption rates, and they have more than doubled after the fix, and also a couple of tweets. So just low-hanging fruit, really.
Can you tell us percentage-wise how many people are using two-factor authentication?
It's about 1%.
Oh, 1%?
Let's say people are listening to this show and they're starting to think, oh, maybe I should do this. You guys make it sound like it's important.
Yeah, it's very easy.
How will their life change? I mean, what will be different if they can they still log in at work and then go home and log in at home?
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
save their accounts into the launcher. How will that work with two-factor?
You should only have to do it once. You can remember the device, the location, so it is fairly seamless. I personally just have no problem with using it, but I guess I've been using two-factor for years, sort of.
So for the two-factor, if you're using like the Google two-factor, and it kind of like makes you like relog onto your machine like once every 30 days and submit that, will you have that same kind of thing happening with the Eve launcher?
You're gonna have to repeat that. Sorry.
Okay, so let's say that, well, maybe it's just something at work, but let's say that the Google Authenticator makes you like log in, or re-enter a code once every 30 days for logging in. Would that same thing happen for the Eve launcher, or is it there's no time limit on the Eve launcher that would make you re-authenticate?
I'm not 100% on that, to be honest. I know we're trying to put in some changes to this process that should make it a lot easier for the player, and the intention is, we really can. You just have to go through this process once for the device or once for the location. So if you have a PC at work, you have a computer at home, and then you shouldn't have to do it more unless something changes, like say you get a new IP address or something like that. or perhaps you upgraded your computer and changed out some hardware to CCP, then we would say, oh, this is something new. Let's authenticate. And this is something that we're going to be doing more of in the future, because that's the only way we can address the credential stuffing problem is just by having inherently better secured accounts going forward.
All right. So let's wrap up this section. And real quick, that 1%, I'm part of the 1%, finally. That's something people are saying in chat, and I agree with them. My 5 accounts are two-factor authenticated. But what
is your email?
Yeah, and I'm changing my passwords, but I got ambushed, so
Can you 2FA?
But I wanted to ask, is that 1% of like all the accounts, or 1% of active Omegas, or what?
As far as I remember, and we're trying to run these stats again, the stats I was advertising just now is from before we fixed the implementation. And that was a conscious decision on our behalf not to advertise a solution that didn't work as intended. Now it does work as intended, and we will pay more attention to how many are using it.
I got it. So you got something that works well, and you want to now push it and tell people to use it.
Yeah, because it solves the big problem of the day, which is really these credential stuffing attacks.
If you put something in the ESI that tells the folks whether or not they're using two-factor authentication, we might be able to use peer pressure at the alliance and corporation level to get our members to turn it on.
I'm for it.
Oh,
This is
totally
something the CSM has asked about.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more players than developers, and I think on botting and all these fronts, if we can leverage the brain power of our awesome player base, then we'll go far.
Yeah, instead of working against them, right? And these guys are pretty smart out here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I guess that wraps up the account talk, but we want to move into something that's very related to that. What do you do with all that money you steal if you break into an account and take the skills and take the ISK? What do you do with that money? Possibly RMT, real money transactions. Can you set that up for us, Noisy? What is that, and what's or actually, maybe we just get to Peligro. What's the big deal with RMT?
Well, two angles to that. First is the pay to win angle from the players. Like it just bothers you to an extent, I believe, because there is that pay to win angle of it. For CCP, it's an issue because of the ways that they acquire the goods, which is largely, as we said, through fraud and hacking. And then if it's from botting, it's not exactly great either. So very few people are selling ISK that they've earned legitimately.
So it's always been, I mean, from the very start, it's always been very obvious when you look at those transactions and what they connect to behavior, and that the incentives around RMT are just all wrong. It just leads directly to all the worst behaviors.
And more to the point, like Noisy said, there's this hazard discount. It's very easy to give a discount on stuff that you stole, right? Which is how they're constantly able to undercut CCP, because there is a legal alternative there. But when you look at the conversion rates, I'm sure you think you can get further through RMT.
CCP has to pay a lot of people to continue EVE running as a game and a service, and these guys, they only have to steal and sell. So,
right. What about those of us that said to our wives, "Look, if you let me play this video game, I can make some money." All right, we'll try something else.
Works for me,
All right, so RMT. You do a lot of research on RMT, right, Noisy?
Yeah.
Ooh, so, Noisy? Who's ever heard of that guy with regard to RMT?
No, he does. He does.
We pretend a little. Can you tell us like something about the how CCP makes it not worthwhile even doing?
Well, okay, so from what I've seen, you do certain things like they'll go ahead, So from the top down, you have Plex, which will go ahead and lower the price to which the RMTers can charge, and then there's the bot bans, and account, and fighting the account hacking, which lowers the amount of ISK available, which means that the ISK sellers have to raise their prices, and if the margin is not great enough, then the ISK sellers will just go ahead and find someplace better to sell their stuff.
Greener pastures, yeah. It's not exactly pretty, but we try to raise the barrier of them doing bad stuff in Eve in any way we can. I'd say that we're working at a disadvantage here because we don't do any kind of restrictions on this. Eve is sort of the it doesn't work in a sandbox. You just couldn't do that.
Well, another thing. Oops, sorry. Another thing that happens, and it happened this weekend with the sale. I monitor the prices, and I see that like the low prices are like $6 a billion, and with the 25% sale, the price of a billion ISK, just going through CCP and buying Plex and converting it like you're supposed to, got down to be like 825 to 840 a billion. And so when you see that hazard discount of only being like 2 to 250, a lot of people don't want to risk saving $2.50 in order to have their account banned for like 7 days.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real risk that ISK you buy illegally is just going to get taken from your account with no recourse, and that sucks. So it should be the better choice for people to go through us and don't do business with these guys that are just.
I kind of want to address another thing in relation to this is the plausible deniability defense. Okay, so when you receive 5 billion ISK that was obtained through stolen credit cards, and CCP knows that, and we take it from you, and you come back and say, "Oh, it's my friend. He's just doing me a solid." That doesn't hold up. You're still receiving stolen property, even if you didn't know. I mean, it has to be taken away. We can't let that stay in the game.
I've got a couple of questions here related to RMT, mainly from the Plex side of it. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't necessarily know what the origins of Plex were into this game. It was not as a gift to players in some way, but primarily as a means to combat real money trading. Since its introduction in 2008, to what extent do you think the introduction of Plex has contributed to reducing overall real money trading and botting, for that matter, as opposed to the other means that team security uses to fight these things?
I think it's great. I mean, it hasn't solved the problem, but it is the legal option that I have to sort of tell people about when they get in trouble for buying from some shady source. I can tell them, here, this is how you do it legitimately, so there won't be a problem in the future. As with players, we try to convert them. You get a chance, and it's basically you just don't get 2 chances, right?
Well, I mean, let's think about it on a relative basis. Where would Eve be in terms of real money trading today if Plex did not exist?
It would be way worse. Absolutely.
Yeah, it would be way worse. You would probably see it everywhere. It would be way more in your face and doing way more damage.
I mean, so while Plex has a benefit to players out there to be able to kind of play to pay, right, and for other players to be able to do it in kind of a CCP legal way of their own version of real money trading, at least on in a one-way direction. Really, the benefit to players is sort of a means to a different end, though, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
you can also pay for your own. If you're a rich guy, you can Plex your account with ISK. Just as long as you're not botting,
Right. But they're really kind of a tool in the process of this larger real money trading fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's I mean, Plex was put in place for for a few different reasons, and like only one of them is this sort of legal alternative for as an outlet for this need. But it's also just like it's just a really smart way to allow players with a lot of time and players with more money than time just to exchange sort of, they're essentially just exchanging different kinds of time. You know, they're taking time here, exchanging it for time there, and it's a brilliant economy. So it also just it has this amazing fluidity to it that it's really helped the game along.
Well, before Plex, there was this system with Eve time codes. And we had the same kind of time codes available in EverQuest and EverQuest 2. And we implemented something like Plex called Chrono. And once it got out there and started going, it completely changed the customer service expense picture for EverQuest 1 and 2. Because it used to be that the most work and the most tickets were going into problems with the exchange of Eve time of time codes between players, and this cleaned that right up. So were there similar customer service expenses for Eve time codes that went down after Plex came out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the old fraud before Plex was all related to these ETCs or Eve time codes. Those were physical codes that you might remember, scratch up a card and type it in. And there was a lot of scamming with these. But they just go for the path of least resistance as always. And so it has changed a lot in these years.
But they were on the Plex, the fraudsters were on the Plex on day one immediately, so that didn't take them very long either.
They try everything.
Try everything.
Credit card fraudsters and everything. Like there's everything. So they try to get money where they can, and the sort of the market system of Eve and the open nature of it is probably makes it a pretty fun playground for these guys to try things out.
Are you guys impressed by some of the things you've seen? Like, what are some of the crazy things you've seen with?
Definitely. I mean, like we've seen a lot of stuff, and I mean,
I know
it's
for
always
a fact that people have written Eve clients from scratch, which you shouldn't do. Please don't modify the client, but it's technically impressive to me, nevertheless.
Yeah. They wrote a client from scratch.
Holy crap!
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot of really smart people. I mean, there's a lot of really smart people out there doing really negative things, But some of the ways they go about it are impressive. I mean, people have figured out incredibly obscure exploits that are just, I mean, hard to understand where they begin. Testing what they things to figure it out. It's just crazy, but yeah.
Back to the Plex thing. If Plex is a meaningful contributor to combating RMT, just sort of in general, right? Wouldn't the key be to continually, albeit with an eye on stability, keep pushing the in-game price of Plex higher in order to make it even less economically viable for third-party illicit sellers of gold?
From an economic standpoint, I mean, like if you just look at it from like one direction, maybe that would work, or maybe that would make sense. But there's just so many factors, and we don't touch the price of Plex. It's just market driven in game. So I
mean, you do touch the price of Plex because you create new demand drivers for what it can be used for.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like but it's more, it's not so conscious most of the time. I mean, we're not really actively trying to push on it all the time. It's more about like, but then again, you think about like if you drive it up, there's other factors as well. People would be less inclined to pay for their accounts, and they would drop accounts, and we would see less players in the game, and it'd be like, there's effects on all sides.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, simply they don't have access to any payment option except for in-game Plex. And so I am concerned with the regular player's ability to participate in these things. Even though it's nice that, the Plex are selling for a lot of ISK so that you can if that's what you're after, you can get more ISK for your dollar. But I just want it to be accessible for everybody and not inflated by people cheating through various methods and sort of making it so that regular Joe can't afford a Plex every now and then.
Is there any reason out there why anybody in the world cannot buy Plex from CCP or an authorized reseller? Like, is there anything to do with anything in any countries out there?
Yeah, it's just where you live. Do you have any of the payment options we accept? I mean, we have players from pretty much every country on the world, I believe. With minor exceptions.
Yeah. So there should be no reason why anybody out there has to go to an illicit seller.
No, I don't think so, but I have heard that many times from players who are like, I could only buy this here, and it doesn't hold up as a defense. But if that is in fact true, then that's a failure on our part.
Why do they take cash?
Everybody, has their own reasons for doing things, and they also have to think about the risks. So that's what it comes down to. We can only try to provide the best possible service we can on payment and everything else, and then educate people on the choices to make and what the rules are.
Grimmy, did you have something to say?
No, it's basically that. What he said.
Right. Is there some comparison that can be made between any of these online game currencies and virtual currencies like Bitcoin?
You certainly can't. No, don't invest in eBisk. It's not a good. Just go for the Bitcoin instead.
That's a pretty deep subject, but we'll save it for a different time. Anything else on? Do you guys want to cover that, or do you want to go on to? Is there anything else on RMT that we want to talk about?
Please don't do it.
Okay.
Yeah, don't buy ISK from bad people.
Yeah, I think we should kind of focus on sort of the underlying things. I mean, look, RMT is out there in its bigger sense. There's probably not a whole big reason to dwell on that let's get to botting.
I know it's a sexy part of the show.
No, it's not just that it's the sexy part. It's a part that's got a lot of stuff to it, and we don't have the time to waste or whatever.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to botting. Go ahead and first of all, let's talk about what botting is. There's a whole presentation on this in 2015 at FanFest. You can check it out with Security Team. They talk about actually at that point they were eliminating the use of software to help you cut up a screen or to what's it called? Amplify your inputs. Yeah.
So software
anyway,
multiplexing. Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yeah, let's talk about botting. What is it? What is the botting?
I'm just going to define it as using something that isn't the Eve client to interact with the Eve client for any purpose, right? So you can bot more or less anything. Usually in the context of EVE Online, it refers to facilitation of wealth. So you're acquiring ISK or something like that in some way. And in an automated fashion, so you don't have to be present, which is why it's not allowed, right? This doesn't provide a level playing field for those who aren't willing to go and download some dirty hack to get ahead.
Grimmy.
Basically, just automation of gameplay in any way or form would be the.
Well, this is where I think it gets sketchy for me. Like ethically, if you start thinking about all the third-party tools and mapping of the wormholes as you're going through them, and all the advantages that kind of technology gets you, and we kind of say that's okay because you're just making a skill plan, or you're just figuring out your fittings before you get into the game. But then, there's stuff that's actually I don't know, maybe checking out the market for you constantly and flagging you that something needs to be updated because you're being outbid. These seem to be pretty big advantages, but those wouldn't really be considered botting or in a criminal act, would they?
Depends on the tool. I mean, really, if it's not a tool CCP made, you're not going to get like any official sanctioning of it from us. it's used at your own risk because we didn't make it and we can't go and do a source code review on every third-party tool that's out there. In general, I would say that the third-party tools rely on information that CCP put there in the client. If it's in the client, if it's in a text file on your computer, you can do whatever you want with it. And if CCP doesn't like that, then we need to just make sure that that information isn't available on the client side.
So do you see a gray or a slippery slope area that this kind of goes into, or are you guys pretty sure like we know botting when we see it or detect it?
I think there are probably a lot of things that we don't know. Try to keep a pretty humble perspective there because we're constantly being told about this and that is going on in game from players.
So
it's mostly noisy that's telling you.
Yeah, Carneros, tell us why botting is so bad. You're a game developer as well.
It puts a strain on the economy. It weakens it, and it reduces the options available to game designers to put new things into the game because they have to be careful about the opportunity for botters. It also puts additional stress on the servers, which leads to the lag word that Dirk mentioned earlier. Yeah, there's a lot of bad side effects of anything that accelerates the economy like that.
And if it's left completely unchecked, it can like really accelerate the economy. It can really have a bad effect and push inflation and all kinds of things. So.
And then separate from the economy, there's also the in-game culture of the community, and built-in unfairness and unlevel playing fields caused by botting that some people can do and get away with and other people can't do and get away with causes a reduction in the culture because of just the friction of the inherent unfairness and unlevel playing field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Window theory.
Well, it does seem to get people upset, doesn't it?
Oh, it does.
Yeah, and I understand that, because if you are playing by the rules and others aren't, then of course you would want those guys to get caught. I think that is partly the reason why there is such a demand for these dev blogs and graphs of, and we'll have some of that for you guys in the future.
And yeah, I mean, I don't want us to get down the rabbit hole of kind of, attempting to discern between botting and then all of these other things that kind of have bits of automated process to it, whether it be input duplication and broadcasting or, various other things that we can probably get into. Let's just stick to botting, right? Because that the automation, basically the full automation of a character out there doing something in order to acquire things, right? Let's go to this recent dev blog that you put out. You said a little over 1,800 accounts were banned for botting / automation in January. Of the 1,800 banned in January, were all of these what we would refer to as botters, as opposed to input duplication or even just, real money trading or anything like that? Was this all about botting?
That was a botting ban wave, indeed. We're dusting off some old systems and trying to bring them up to current standards. And I think based on the 1,800 we found in January, that was very promising. So it's probably systems that we're going to take further.
When you do a wave like that and you catch 1,800 accounts, do you go back through later and look at the similarities and differences amongst the accounts? Do you look for patterns of what kind of folks are doing this? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is how we improve our detection as such. We study the accounts we ban, and these profiles are fed into detection code to help us find more of it, to stay on top of it. And sometimes if you stay on top of them for long enough, they will adapt or they will go away, and then you have to look for them again.
There are a lot of different kinds of players playing EVE. Are there any patterns you can see about which kinds of parts of EVE are more likely to be participating in botting?
I'm going to call out 00 Space and Renter Corporation alliances and such.
Aha.
Don't harbor botters, please. I don't expect the players to police this for us. It's clear that it's on CCP to do this. But we really need the players on our side if we're going to be able to do it. Reporting things to us, and also being vocal when there is a problem. I got some questions actually about this when there was a big uproar about botting, if it was negative to me, and I just said no outright. I think it's great. If you guys have concerns, let us hear it, because that's the stuff I need internally to get movement on this topic. And I think we wouldn't be in such a good position today if there hadn't been this public backlash.
So is there a lot of
the community? I mean, what the community really wants is something we pay attention to. So like we do it everywhere. Like what you guys are saying online, what you're saying in podcasts and on the CSM or wherever. Like we're part of it. Data is only one end of the stick.
Yeah, we're seeing you with your band hammer now on screen. It's pretty big.
One of the questions that I asked you, Pellegro, the day that this dev blog came out was, is 1800 in January a normal month or the result of a ban wave? Your answer was, it's not normal. We're extra mad right now. Clean up 2018. So my question is, 1800 is a great number, but if it's not normal because you were extra mad, can you tell us what is normal on a monthly basis?
It depends. What did we find? I would say we don't do ban waves as such. We ban every single day. This was I just call it a ban wave because we dusted off some old code and then we ran it and we got a big pile of results that we went through and issued a lot of bans as a result of it. But we shouldn't be banning once a month. It should be constant. As soon as we find something bad, we're going to take it out.
Right, because some people would want to look at this and go, "Wow, 1800. If I multiply that by 12, I come out to this really big number." That I guess once you go through something like this, you do a wave, you get 1800. I'd have to imagine that it's a while before you can sort of do that again, and therefore 1800 to me in a ban wave seems small in the great, in the vastness that sort of is EVE players and the economy and all that kind of stuff, and certainly small compared to Unholy Rage back in 2009 that netted 6,200 in one day.
Yeah.
That was actually like months of work preparing that.
Yeah.
So that was not like one day type of deal.
Well, no, just meaning that on one day, 62 were banned that morning, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the work behind, finding these and, verifying everything and doing everything, right?
And what can players do to help?
Well, you could send emails to security@ccpgames.com if you have some good information, with regards to RMT or people botting or anything like that. You might get some game time as a reward if it's good, or you might get some Plex under a program we call Plex for Snitches.
Or a feeling.
Yeah. Best name.
Sending you an email or reporting it in that way kind of requires a level of effort on behalf of the player to sort of begin to make a case, right? As opposed to the report a bot button. And here I'm going to ask this question that I've made some comments out there before. Is the report a bot button actually something that helps you, or is it a placebo for players to think that they're doing something?
It absolutely helps me. Just on a daily basis, I monitor it. We have a SQL code that just looks at the bot reports as they come in, and if people are being reported as a bot, they're the first guys I'll look at on any given day, right? So it's about getting the guys under the eyes of the security team, and use that button for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, in the future,
can you be overwhelmed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in some cases, the report is not accurate. That happens too. In some cases, it's a spite report.
Especially if everyone who just reported them is all in a fleet together.
Exactly. So there's all kinds of reports, but all of them are appreciated, even if they're not factually accurate. We can just move on to the next one.
What do you do?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, because there's been discussions about whether it's safe to report someone, and it absolutely is, in terms of like nobody's gonna get banned as an innocent person just because they got reported. It's not gonna happen. They're gonna go through the same stringent process of verification that any other bot. And
I thought
yeah,
we've seen that happen
it's
to our
safe.
FCs before, in the middle of a fleet, where they got mass reported by the opposite side and got taken out of the game first and then put back in afterwards.
Very unlikely that happened through the report the bot thing.
There's simply no
Some time
automation
ago.
available there. It's just for me to be able to
Okay.
in the future we want to improve the feedback you guys get from that. But I can do stuff like right now I could query that table and I could say, show me all the bots that are permanently banned today that were reported in the past 2 months. And then we're looking at things like providing feedback to the player, not just, not naming and shaming, but sending you some notification to let you know that action was taken based on the information you sent us. We can do that if we can make it anonymous enough.
Exactly, and like Pellegro was saying earlier, I mean, we don't expect the community to do the work for us, and there's no burden on players or any sort of, like, we're not pretending we can impress a duty upon our customers to report things, and they absolutely, if they don't want to, they don't have to. It's up to people who want to help out. If people feel like it, if this is something that people want to do and feel good doing, then we appreciate the help. That's all there is.
Yeah, and I wasn't asking that about it being a placebo because I think that there's some, underlying attempt to simply placate players, more along the lines of, if you ask players to simply push a button because they've got this speculation that they really haven't looked into, that the team can just be inundated with too many false positives for them to really be able to handle.
Well, do you punish people for doing that sort of thing too?
Yeah, we have this feature that basically says, never show me a report from this guy again.
So, and I mean, for abusing any system, whether it's the petition system or any report system, I mean, we reserve the right to do something about that if it's apparent that it's that people are doing it with ill intent.
I've never banned anyone for abusing the bot report system, but I certainly just flag people as this guy doesn't report anything good.
All right, so what do we do with a big alliance leader that tells his people not to report each other?
Yeah, you ignore him and then report them anyway.
It's a personal decision, right? Like, he would never know anyway, right?
I mean, if you're a player who cares about the integrity of EVE Online, and I'm sure you do if you enjoy the product and you spend time on it, it's your hobby, then if you have information and you want to share it with CCP, we just really appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's a personal sort of decision for any player. It's not something you have to don't have to toe the line. It's not an organizational sort of decision. You just, if you want to report someone that you see breaking the rules, you can do that, and it's completely between that player and us.
But you're saying that if your guys get reported, it doesn't affect them until they're actually caught, right?
Yeah, and there's no way you could report someone, like let's say you have a fleet of 500 people and you tell everybody report to this one guy. Only thing you would achieve then is there would be 500 reports on that particular character ID in a database. There's no automation in place that bans him or anything like that.
Good to hear.
Going on to that all the bans are manually checked. There's no automated banning. In the latest dev blog, there was a comment about reducing the penalty from 30 days to 3 days, but then in the forums, right? Pellegro, you said that it's basically players will get a 3-day ban, but if you're like an RM tier, that it'll be a permanent ban first time.
Yes, I'm not trying to convert someone who's using EVE Online as a business. I have just no interest in you. If you're a player, those are the guys that get 2 chances. The other guys are a liability. They're not an asset in any way. They're actually just a cost to CCP.
Amen.
Yeah, because there was like a lot of chatter on the forums that, oh my gosh, why are you reducing the penalties? But it seems that if you're gonna like change it so that a RM tier it goes from 2 strikes to 1 strike. That seems to be making the penalty more fitting.
Yeah. I mean, armed tiers have always been permanently banned. Sellers, that is, on first offense, because then you're not a player. You're just making a living.
Yeah, that's always been sort of it's one of the more most likely things just to get you flat out banned if you're caught selling ISK for for real money.
When did this bot wave sort of initiate itself with you guys? Was it when botting began to get brought up on Reddit? Was it when a bunch of obvious nixes seemed to go down in one day? What was the trigger for you to begin initiating what would become a wave?
Oh, there's a lot in that. I mean,
Well,
it's the
first
player demand, right?
Yeah.
That's one. And then also after that blog was delayed in December because it only touched on account hacking security instead of botting. There was just this realization from the security team that after a year of trying to stop these hacked accounts, we aren't able to do it. That was a tough realization for myself. But it also allows me to go forth and focus on botting more in 2018, which I think will please the players.
Can we just stipulate for the record now that the demand for you to crucify botters is always there, and you don't have to wait for you don't have to wait for some segment of the community to raise its collective voice?
Yeah. I actually sent an email to the business leadership team here at CCP, and I said, what if I told you we could please our players by banning more of them?
Yeah.
And I think there is something there.
Grimmy, did you have something to add?
No, I'm good.
Sorry, I keep calling on you. You're that quiet kid in class. So I just gotta.
Yeah.
It's funny because I came over to Eve a long time ago, and a couple guys came over with me, and one of them went back to our old game and said, "Look, this is how a real company handles botters," and it was about a huge bandwave. But he was so impressed with the way CCP was just merciless with people who were getting ahead with automated means. So I guess it does have like a residual effect. The people seem to be very, very angry at botting. I guess I can figure it out. When somebody's outworking you in an unfair way, that's not.
Yeah, and it also just cheapens and undermines the whole kind of beauty of Eve, doesn't it?
Yep.
That actions have meaning and consequence, and death is a serious matter. These are like high-level EVE Online concepts.
And then there's just these guys out there who are not just botting and getting things for free that you have to do by sitting there and working hard. There's they don't even care about the game. They're not even playing. They're not even players. They have no love for the universe or what it stands for. They're just there to do business, and
on giving them permabans on first offense, it's also like we don't think they're going to go away. They're just going to come right back, because they're doing a job.
Right. So that's clear. I think Noisy made that point too. Those kinds of guys are blasted and dead right away.
Yeah. And we don't mind talking about those guys either. I think, if we're ever going to like...
Oh, can you tell us about Lenny Kravitz? Is he still banned permanently?
No, I can't talk about guy specific.
I saw an opening there.
Well, I've got a question about those guys that you have no use for and you're willing to talk about them. Could you when you ban them and ban the characters, could you put them into a different holding corp, because Doomhammer or Doomheim is for people that biomass? Could you put them into a separate corporation? And by the way, that's not my idea. I read that on the forums.
Good.
That's a cool idea.
We typically group them by tagging, so we can tag users with all kinds of stuff. So you have a user ID and a username, and then we can apply subtags to that, depending on what happened, like a bot ban first offense, or first time ISK buyer, or ISK seller, so you're permanently banned, that kind of thing.
I like a corporate jail. That sounds kind of funny. Or a tag, instead of saying like wanted, it would say, dirty RMT or something.
Do we still have the function that was put in place, I think, back in 2012? Oh, at that time, it was an inability. Once you have been accused of botting and found to have been botting, whether it was a first offense or not, is that character then locked down to no character transfers after that? And are you going to put in anything related to, nope, you cannot extract from that character now that we've got skill extraction?
Yes and yes, both. The character transfer lock is fully functional. We apply it to people who are banned for botting. It's outbound only, so you just can't get rid of your character. You can receive a character, and going forward, we will extend that flag to skill extractions. So if you like to extract skills, don't bot, because you won't be able to.
Parole, permanent parole, baby. Ankle bracelets.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a I don't know if we're going to get into it from any of the questions, so I just want to get it in there that we've sort of been talking to people about this, like going into discussions with the CSM about all this, and then we see that people aren't always up to speed on like who does what, and sort of which bans belong where, and what rule enforcement is done where. So like just throwing it in there that like team security handles like bots, RMT, all that stuff, accounts. Then any bans that have to do with like toxic behavior, reports about saying bad stuff in chat, or any sort of harassment or anything like that, that goes through tickets to GMs, and they handle that, and that's a difference. Those two things are sort of not handled by the same team all the time, although they work closely together. I just want to throw it in there so people understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just don't deal with toxicity as such,
Of all the people that got banned in the last month for botting, what percentage of them do you think would have started with a player report as opposed to some other way that you guys found them?
That's a good question. I would say more than half of them have a report, which is why I think it's such a good indicator. It's just, I see bot reports and then I can check who sent them. And one good indication is if there's a lot of unique characters sending a report about the same guy, especially if those guys are then very obvious players. And from the logs and sort of the visualization tools that we have, they look completely different, because a player is inherently noisy and unpredictable. But RMTers have a MO, and they usually follow it.
I've got a question about because the whole going free to play presented you a challenge. How many of the botting accounts, or just in general, how many accounts are you banning that are alphas versus omegas?
They are increasingly using alpha accounts, but it's all over the place. It's just people bot for all kinds of reasons. Obviously, alphas are lucrative because there's no cost in spinning them up. But we also, if you are abusing alpha accounts, you're gonna get the permaban. At that point you haven't, you're not an asset.
Well, it seems to me the impetus to bot is to automate your downtime, pretty much. And but Eve is full of that kind of thing, right? I mean, mining and walking away from mining or watching Netflix while you do something that's very routine, even PvE.
Sure,
is kind of the same thing. It's just this is it seems like one step further, where you actually walk away and the computer does it for you.
It's the one step further that matters.
But it seems, I wonder, it still seems like it's in the tradition of Eve, right? Multi-account players are a real thing. Why? Because it scales.
Yeah, but then you're multi-account, with the emphasis on players. You're doing all that work, not some code that's hacking the client or written to do something that some guy wrote with the intention of selling it for profit or something like that.
Well, right. But what about stuff like the market bots that were brought up earlier, that, the fact that they can alert you that you need to. Are those considered bots, by the way, or is that just third-party programming financial tools?
Depends what tool you're talking about. I think there's a lot of them that do cache scraping on the client side. Truthfully, even though cache scraping is against the rules, it's not something we can feasibly detect. So our intention has always just been that if we want that gone, we would remove the cache, the info that you have available on the client side.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to this recent devblog of the 1800, mining bots were the largest group represented, with ratting bots coming in a close second. Just for people out there that didn't know, it was mining bots that were the most. Can you speak to the typical mining bot? I know that when they changed the fighter mechanics and everything, that changed a bit about how carriers and supers were being used. Although we think from what we're seeing out there that we're seeing some bots being produced that are working with that at the moment. But what's a typical mining bot? Do these tend to be exhumers and subcaps, or are you seeing Rorquals show up now as well?
Everything, really. It's all over the place.
From like groups of ventures up to like massive fleets of huge ships doing stuff.
Skiffs acting in unison.
Yeah. So it's pretty much everything, like I said.
Ice is also a popular one. Everybody likes ice.
I don't know why you'd need to bot ice. Anyways.
All right, we're getting close to the end of the show. Is there more botting stuff that you wanted to cover?
I see a question here about negative wallet balances.
Yeah.
Should I answer that?
Yeah.
Okay, so negative wallet balances, are they an effective punitive measure or just a reason to ignore a character account? Can this affect the MER stats in any way? As an example, I'm conflicted. Negative wallet balances really are harsh for a player to deal with, and you can't get out of it because you can't use the market. So even when we tell you, okay, go buy a Plex and sell it on the market, you still have to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to do that. So it's very crippling for your ability to play Eve.
Because it wasn't designed as a function. It's something that just happens.
Yeah. I mean, if you have negative wallet, you can't repair your ship, you can't use the market, you can't file a contract, you can't do, you can't buy ammo.
Yeah, and that wasn't like it wasn't like when all this was being designed way back in the day. There wasn't like nobody ever thought like, oh, if people will buy something, illegally, they'll end up with a negative wallet balance, and this is how they fix it. Like that was never. It's just a side product, and so it works. It happens to come out as a form of punishment, but it's not good. So and we don't want to punish. We want to or just be rid of them if they can't be reformed. So like there's no people to feel punishment. That's not the goal, and this is like a clunky
really
one for us.
About getting them on our side,
Yeah, and this just doesn't like mechanically work,
the 3-day ban instead of the 30. The 30-day ban is really harsh, and game time continues to expire. You don't train skills. That's intentional. And I think perhaps if we are a little bit more lenient on that first strike, that our players will appreciate that goodwill and perhaps listen more. I mean, it's clear that what we've done in the past hasn't had the impact that we wanted. So it's time for something new, in my book.
Right. Assuming that they're not able to just come back in 3 days, liquidate their account, liquidate their skill points,
absolutely.
and kind of like, put it out there into the cloud.
Yeah. It's like it's absolutely not being done to make it easy for bad guys to do anything. It's supposed to be.
But I mean, if they just want to come back and bot in 3 days, then at least we will have expedited getting them out of the game.
Yeah. At least to going somewhere else.
Pellegro, in a recent article on PC Game Zen, you made the comment in there, we've been measuring bans for the longest time, and we're not so sure success there has any impact. So now we're trying to measure player sentiment as the true indicator of whether or not we're doing a good job. Knowing that player sentiment can be a hot mess at times, how do you give them sufficient information to be reasonably outraged when they should be reasonably outraged, but also understanding of kind of the strides that you are making on an ongoing basis?
I think our actions just have to speak for themselves, and if we do a good job, you guys should see it in game. I think you should see less bots. I think you should see less inflation in the economy. All of that.
I think
By the way,
with more communication, with more regular communication, with explaining some of the things we've been doing today, and being people like how things work and how we do things and why we do them and all that stuff. I think people will be better armed to sort of tell the difference between a good situation and a bad situation and see how everything is. And then like Pellegro says, you should see less bots in game and you should see actual results.
Talking about the actual results and in game, I know that with pauses that it was most efficient just to blow them up. With citadels, are you going to be maybe blowing them up and creating a little music video of exploding Astra houses? Because
already blown up a lot of them. I need to update the frag video.
Good. And people have talked about we had this discussion at GSM Summit. It was kind of like just at the time kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing about doing maybe a stream where we blow up butters and we everybody seemed to like that, and we sort of been talking about it, how we can do that. Obviously we'd have to be certain we're not like throwing actual players who are breaking the rules. Like we don't want to take actual players who are breaking the rules and shaming them. We don't think that's a good idea, but if we can just throw out have some fun with absolutely guaranteed RMT farmers, that's probably be fun.
How
Actual
about that?
players shame works on. The people who are behind the commercialization of botting and real money trading give not one shit about shame.
Well, how about that though? How many times would you say you've looked at something and it's like, yeah, that guy's actually playing. He's not a bot, so no need to shame him. Like, how often do you guys get false positives?
I mean, not often. We strive to avoid those. They're the bane of our existence. If we could take the ESTF, the oldest bot detection system, as a baseline, probably banned about 75,000 bots. 2 confirmed false positives, both caused by a bug which we isolated and fixed. The bug was character transfers, so it was sort of like an oversight.
Yeah, like exactly. Like characters, they sold their characters to someone else, to an innocent player, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they get banned, which is kind of terrible. But spotted that and made sure it wouldn't happen again.
Well, good. There's that little thing. All right.
Well,
I mean, if we make a mistake, we need to fix it. It's not
Absolutely.
acceptable. That's why we don't ban unless we're confident, and we shouldn't going forward either.
I have a new appreciation for your work because you have so many people to deal with, so many things to deal with, and you can't make any mistakes. That's really
difficult. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Consequences for players are pretty heavy. If it's pretty bad. It's a bad feeling to get banned for something you didn't do, and we don't want any like that.
Back in 2009, when Unholy Rage went down, you guys were able to post some graphs out there about what it did to CPU usage, what it did in various systems, going from 200 people in the system a day to 25. Did this ban have any noticeable effect on anything, or has the game in terms of CPU just gotten so much stronger that 1800 isn't what it was back then?
Well, we saw a little bit of an impact on the active ISK. Also some impact on the ships that they often like to use. But no, I mean, at this point, we're trying to step up our detection and ability to deal with the bots once we have identified them on a larger scale than doing it on sort of an individual basis.
Yep. All right. Well, I think a couple of the takeaways that we have from today, right, is protect your account. You should probably be using 2-factor authentication. Protect your email. You should be using 2-factor authentication, or strong passwords, all of these things, right? And that team security continues to work on getting rid of whatever the remnants are of the overall botting scourge and real money trading. And it's better, but it is better today than it was in the past. Yes,
I would say so. Absolutely.
Always improving. Always improving.
All right. One last thing. This isn't a subject that we're going to talk long about, but the casinos and gambling and all that kind of stuff. Was that?
Sorry, I gotta go now. No.
Oh, you were so good before.
What'd you say?
But is that a decision that you guys weighed in on, or was that a community
We weighed in
decision?
on it, but we didn't make that decision. We usually do not make the decisions. We file reports and then we can make recommendations, but we aren't the decision makers at CCP. And we didn't. We're not responsible for banning gambling, I'll say.
But we did do a lot of research on that whole thing, though, and a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
and
I see.
Also, what was just the worst thing for me with that whole ordeal was actually dealing with tickets from gambling addicts who had I had one guy who had spent like $30,000 on Plex to gamble, and he gambled it all away. And he was like, "I want you to ban me because I'm addicted."
Oh, that's so sad.
Terrible. And I mean, yeah, I mean, gambling was generally just it sucked up a lot of resources, and it was sort of a haven for a lot of trouble, as people probably know who followed this. It's just a very, very difficult area for us to be expected to deal with way.
Yeah, and so, well, I hate to end on that somber note, but that was pretty startling. That kind of damage that it does to people. But on the other side of it, are there those little corporate lotteries and stuff that people used to do? Is all that kind of stuff still okay to do or not?
Like you're talking about those little, like, hey, everybody put their name in a hat and we'll draw a prize or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, technically speaking, third-party games of chance are not. They're against the rules. That being said, those sort of little things between friends are not the reason why the rules were set. So there's
the reason this is, if we're talking about IWantISK in particular, I can say that name. They were massive. It was about the power dynamics of the game, not so much the fact that they were running a casino, but it was more
it's just
about
like it create this huge black hole of rotating ISK that we lose all oversight, and it's just we really can't be responsible for that sort of that level of transactions.
And I remember
on
other
something
people telling me
have.
that if they wanted to compete with the income stream of IWantISK, the only recourse they had was to start their own space casino.
Mhm.
We do something called Acer segmenting of players, and during this period, we found another type of player that simply never left station. All he did was gamble in station. So it added like
wow.
a new type of customer as such.
Well, how
Hey,
did
new
you?
types of customers, man.
Yeah, how'd you
Gotta look
react to
for 'em.
that?
I'm all about new customers.
Yeah, and I mean, someone is saying that they were a revenue competitor. I wouldn't say that's true. If anything, people were buying Plex to gamble. So if we were just being all sinister and wanting to make money, we would probably just have looked the other way. It was just it's a difficult thing to be responsible for without having the kind of oversight you need, and it was a source of a lot of different problems.
Yeah. So you guys put together a package, and then the business team looked at it, and I mean, other things happened too. But basically, they are the ones that made the decision, but based on a lot of the work that you guys did.
Yes, and that included the EP, the strategy team, and or the senior business leadership at CCP.
And I mean, there's all kinds of like legal sort of things that we can never be completely sure of that are just kind of scary and liabilities and stuff. So it's yeah. It was a crazy business. I mean, the sort of the sad thing is, like, that, like, there's a lot of people out there that just like to throw a little bit of money here and there betting on 80 matches or sports matches in the real world or something, and just having fun doing that. And it's kind of sad to see all that go, but it's just part of the game.
Yeah, like the Alliance tournament being bet on and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's for a lot of people that just adds a little bit of fun, and that's totally understandable. But it's hard to draw the line sort of between, like, the guys doing it reasonably, or it's like just really hard to draw the line anywhere else than we did.
Everything starts off small and reasonable, and then it ends up getting abused and ruining it for everybody.
Well, yeah, it was a big complicated thing, and we just didn't have a lot of good choices there, apart from the one we made.
Well, what a day, talking about all this security stuff and ending up on just the evils of some gambling, or just how it can be distorted. But we should call it a program. We will have if you guys want to meet the security guys and guard, we're gonna. It's funny because now I think of you as very separate, but you guys are actually now together in the same team.
Kind of. I'm on the community team is a part of marketing, so we are technically not on the same team, but we all work really closely together, and now I'm working.
Tell them there's only one team. It's CCP.
That's true.
That's right.
To some degree, it's only the larger E family, right?
Yep.
Indeed.
The friendship.
Yes.
We're all on the same team.
All aboard the friendship.
So after the show, we're going to spill into Discord, Talking in Stations Discord, and you guys can come over and have a chat, have some coffee, hang around with some of the CCP guys. But that is it. And one last moment for any unresolved questions or comments you guys wanted to make.
I want to say thank you to Whimsical, who just tipped us $10. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Wim.
Thanks for that, and all the subscriptions that came in. There's about 7 of them. And thanks again to Patreon. And we have a new website, thanks to Keska, one of our panelists. And that website is talkinginstations.com. So check that out for all the back issues. And this one will be up later today. I do want to say thanks very much to a big portion of Permaban and the security team, CCP Grimmy, CCP Guard, and of course CCP Peligro. Thank you guys for showing up today.
That was my pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was really, really good.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, really appreciate you guys. Great conversation about something that needs to be known and isn't as well known as it should be. And I'm glad you guys are going to be talking about it a lot more in the future.
It's a battle of hearts and minds, really.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks very much. That'll wrap it up for us this week. We will see you next week on Talking in Stations.
Bye.